Thank you for providing me the opportunity to moderate the session today. I'm really looking forward to hearing the presentations from the various presenters. It looks like a very interesting forum. So as mentioned, my name is Dr. Carl Bolt-Pervins. I'm a environmental chemist by training and have spent 20+ years working in the waste management field in Australia and also in the Pacific. What I'm going to do today is introduce the various speakers and also chair the question and answer sessions during the course of the presentation. So in terms of an introduction to the session, in the past, many government administrations have not been able to cope with the rapid escalation of solid waste problems and consequently have left densely settled areas with no services, polluted precious air by open burning of wastes and damaging the land and water resources by the careless dumping of waste. Faced with these failures, government administrations have then looked for experts, new ways of raising funds to pay for the ever-increasing costs of waste management. First, they recruited and trained their own experts, but the results were not always very successful, and failures were blamed on insufficient funds, bureaucratic restrictions, and inadequate decision-making procedures. Often small-scale entrepreneurs and groups of residents took action to fill the gaps, organising and providing services on a local scale that at least moved their wastes out of the immediate neighbourhoods. The most recent approach has been to invite private enterprise to take over the task, to increase the coverage, to improve efficiency, and to reduce the pollution of natural resources. And the results have been very promising. Do we really need to look elsewhere for solid waste management, or have we finally found the right approach? This session is dedicated to private enterprise in the waste management industry and the role and the know-how that it's played in this important sector. The session is split into two parts. The first half, we're going to hear from the experts and share their objectives in coming together and partnering with governments to address the waste management issues. We also want to know what motivated them in the first place and how far they have come. We carefully selected the organisations to give you a range of experiences from those who have been around for a very long time, as well as those who have recently started. So just my personal view is, in the world we are faced with a fantastic opportunity. I think in general, the management of waste has become increasingly a focus, particularly with the greenhouse recent carbon issues globally and global warming. And I think for the people on this phone call or conference and video, you are the people that will make all the difference, and it can be done. We can certainly introduce programs, no matter how small the state is, we can introduce programs that can certainly improve the environmental outcomes for those regions. So without any further ado, I'll start introducing the presentations, and certainly we'll have some time for some questions and answers during the course of the presentation. So allow me to introduce the first presenter, Aurora Gloaguan. Our first presenter, she is the cluster manager with CODRED Pacific in New Caledonia. CODRED Pacific is a body of 40 private companies that work in waste management sector in New Caledonia. In her role as cluster manager, she ensures to link all 40 members of CODRED to institutional partners, so together they can foster good working relationships through the provision of waste management products and services. She will basically share CODRED's experience in New Caledonia and point to opportunities of those wishing to come together and move forward. I welcome your presentation, Aurora. I'll hand it over to you now. Thank you.
Bonjour à tous, je m'appelle Aurore Gloaguan et je suis le manager du cluster CODRED Pacifique. Le cluster ACOTRADE Pacifique a été créé en 2011. Il regroupe 38 acteurs de la gestion des déchets en Nouvelle-Calédonie, des entreprises de collecte et de traitement, des bureaux d'études, des associations de protection de l'environnement et le lycée du Mont-d'Or. La diversité de ces acteurs nous permet d'avoir une vision globale de la gestion des déchets sur notre territoire. Les projets pilotés par le cluster aujourd'hui s'inscrivent nécessairement dans l'un des 4 axes de développement stratégique définis par les membres. Optimiser les coûts de gestion des déchets, accompagner le développement de la réglementation, professionnaliser notre secteur d'activité et développer de nouveaux marchés. Concernant les financements d'ACOTRADE, 60% de son budget de fonctionnement provient des subventions attribuées par la province sud et 40% restants proviennent des cotisations des membres. L'un des objectifs complémentaires, et non pas des moindres, est de s'affranchir d'une partie des financements publics pour développer des sources d'autofinancement via nos projets. Alors, comment optimiser les coûts de gestion des déchets? Grande question. En tant que territoire insulaire, nous devons faire face à des problématiques spécifiques telles que la petitesse de nos marchés et la production limitée de déchets. La plupart des modes de traitement sont basés sur des économies d'échelle. C'est paradoxal à l'heure où nous tentons tous de réduire considérablement notre production. Cela nous impose d'innover, soit en adaptant des modes de traitement provenant de territoires plus grands, ou en créant de nouveaux modes de traitement adaptés à nos modes de vie et à la taille de nos îles. Une des pistes que nous explorons depuis plusieurs années est de transformer un déchet en matière première. Cela nous permet de réduire considérablement les coûts de gestion en redonnant une valeur marchande à la matière ainsi produite. C'est ce que nous sommes en passe de réussir avec le verre que nous valorisons dans le secteur de la construction en le substituant aux sables de mer et de rivière dans les agrégats de béton. Le défi ici ne réside pas tant dans les qualités techniques du produit qui a fait ses preuves, mais plutôt dans la certification du matériau auprès des organismes normaliseurs et des professionnels du secteur de la construction. En effet, nous devons leur donner confiance en cette nouvelle ressource et remplir les conditions de normalisation pour que les assureurs suivent. Le développement de la réglementation est un axe de travail très important au sein d'ACOTRADE. C'est un levier essentiel pour le développement des filières de collecte et de traitement des déchets. Nous travaillons donc en étroite collaboration avec les provinces qui réglementent notre secteur. ACOTRADE fait le lien entre les porteurs de projets, membres ou non du cluster. Nous les renseignons sur les éléments techniques, réglementaires et financiers. Nous pouvons également les diriger vers les bons interlocuteurs pour faciliter leur démarche. L'expertise de nos membres revêt un rôle de facilitateur pour le développement de notre secteur d'activité. Nous sommes également amenés à participer aux réflexions sur les projets de texte. En tenant compte de la réalité du terrain, cela permet aux parties de s'assurer qu'ils seront applicables. C'est ainsi que nous avons identifié des déchets qui posaient problème. Je vous ai proposé 2 exemples. Le premier, en haut à droite, concerne la gestion des huiles usagées. Il y a 10 ans, la province sud nous a demandé de proposer des solutions pour garantir la traçabilité de ces déchets. C'est ainsi qu'est née la plateforme de stockage tampon des huiles usagées du GIE-BEHP. Cette plateforme, équipée de 2 isotanks de 6 000 litres chacun, divisés en compartiments de 1000 litres, nous permet de stocker le temps de réaliser des analyses, les huiles usagées destinées au traitement thermique. Grâce à cet outil, nous nous assurons qu'aucune pollution ne se produise pendant le traitement. Le second exemple, en bas dans la caisse rouge, concerne les fusées et signaux pyrotechniques périmés. Depuis 6 ans, nous travaillons toujours avec la province sud sur un projet de traitement local de ces déchets. Les fusées représentent un risque considérable lorsqu'elles sont périmées car elles contiennent de la poudre noire qui est classée comme un explosif de catégorie 1.3, 1.4 qui devient instable avec le temps. Nous espérons d'ici le premier semestre 2022 réaliser une opération de déstockage des ports et des marinas pour les sécuriser et d'ici le second semestre 2022 procéder au traitement thermique dans un four dédié et de taille adaptée à notre territoire. Bien souvent, la gestion des déchets ne dégage pas une image très sexy. Ça ne sent pas très bon, ce n'est pas très agréable à regarder, ça nous encombre et on est pressé de s'en débarrasser. C'est dans ce contexte qu'intervient notre troisième axe de développement, la professionnalisation de notre secteur d'activité. À défaut d'avoir une image très commerciale, la moindre des choses, c'est de montrer que nous sommes de vrais professionnels avec des compétences solides et que nous exerçons dans le respect de l'environnement. Cela commence par le lycée avec un travail entre les membres d'Acotred et les enseignants du lycée du Mont d'Or sur le contenu pédagogique de la filière environnement. Cela nous permet de nous assurer que les jeunes, une fois sur le marché du travail, disposeront des compétences nécessaires pour les rendre employables. Nous essayons de réduire le gap qui existe entre la théorie et la réalité de terrain. Nous poursuivons ensuite ce travail en entreprise qui se traduit par de la formation continue aux bonnes pratiques en termes de santé, de sécurité au travail et la consolidation des compétences professionnelles. Nous voici arrivés au dernier axe de développement qui consiste en la création de nouveaux marchés. Notre projet sur le verre rentre dans cet axe également puisqu'il va créer une nouvelle ressource. Mais nous pouvons également intervenir en créant de nouvelles entreprises, de nouveaux métiers et des emplois. Je vous propose deux exemples. Le premier est porté par l'un des membres d'Acotred. Après de nombreuses recherches et échanges, nous avons identifié une barge anti-pollution qui nous permettra de répondre aux nombreuses problématiques de la gestion des déchets dans les ports et les marinas. En tant qu'île, il était important que l'on mène des réflexions sérieuses sur ce sujet. Nous allons donc prochainement équiper la Nouvelle-Calédonie d'une barge multiservice qui pourra gérer plusieurs déchets, à savoir récupérer les eaux grises et noires sur les bateaux, ramasser des poubelles, filtrer le gasoil, pomper les résidus dans les réservoirs et les cales, ramasser les macro-déchets en surface, contenir les incendies de navires. Le mot-clé du second exemple est l'anticipation. Le marché des panneaux photovoltaïques ayant connu un franc succès, nous travaillerons prochainement avec le cluster Synergie qui intervient sur le secteur du développement des énergies renouvelables en vue du vieillissement du parc de panneaux photovoltaïques calédoniens. Nous avons donc commencé à travailler conjointement sur un cahier des charges qui devra nous permettre de mener une opération pilote de démantèlement et de traitement sur le territoire calédonien. J'espère qu'à travers les exemples que nous venons d'aborder ensemble, vous comprendrez mieux les missions d'Acotred et que peut-être cela vous aura donné des idées. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Aurori. That was a tremendous presentation. Our next presenter for the day is Mr. Tony Curry. I've known Tony for over 20 years and he is an outstanding contributor to the waste industry. Tony represents the Waste Contractors and Recyclers Association, who have been around since 1948. They've been one of Australia's most vibrant waste management industry bodies that has significant influence on how waste policies, practices and technologies have evolved over time in the state of New South Wales. Here today, he will tell us about the involvement with WAKAR in the waste management. Tony is an Executive Director of the Waste Contractors and Recyclers Association. Tony's been involved in the waste recycling industry since 1990 and is aware of many and varied business challenges and issues that are faced by business operators, such as demands for better customer service, better cost control, higher productivity, and better planning. Work health and safety issues, the cost of rising fuel, the shortage of skills, and the challenges posed by the introduction of new laws, regulations, and other things like insurances, urban sprawl, environmental matters, and obviously good training. I'll pass the presentation over to Tony now, but I'd like you to all welcome Tony to the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Carl, for that very warm introduction. Prior to my life in the waste industry, I have lived and worked in various Pacific countries, including 12 months in Papua New Guinea and a 3-month stint in Fiji. And if I look out my home office window today, if you all wave to me, I'm in Wollongong, New South Wales. I reckon I could probably see most of you if you jump really high. So WAKAR has been continually industrially registered with the Industrial Relations Commission and the Fair Work Commission since May 1948. We've got 215 members across New South Wales and the ACT, and they own, operate and control about 95% of the equipment, the assets and the infrastructure that's used in the waste and recycling industry across New South Wales and the ACT. So that does give us a fair amount of leverage when we're negotiating and talking to other stakeholders and government. We've got 8 sponsors who help fund the association as well. And I report to a board of 12 members that are elected from across the industry. And you can find out anything you want to know about our association by going to the website that's listed there, including our calendar of events. Look, I'm going to focus on some of the things that are important to the members and to the industry. It's important that an association like ours provides the right platform for business to be able to operate on a level playing field. And one of the key things that our association does, we're registered to actually manage and support the Waste Management Award, which is the award that governs the payment of all wages and all conditions for all employees across the industry, including all job classifications, whether they're full-time, part-time or casual, and even employers who have registered enterprise agreements still have to reference back to the award. And that makes it really easy when an organisation is considering a tender, because the tender component for wages has to be at least minimum conditions and wages as per the award. So I'm just having a bit of trouble flicking onto the next screen. Here we go. Work health and safety is also a very, very important part of what we do. We've got a dedicated work health and safety forum that meets on a bi-monthly basis. And in the word of our projects manager, Glenn Caffin, commercially, we're very, very fierce competitors. But when it comes to workplace safety, we need to share key learnings. And by sharing key learnings in the space of work health and safety, we can avoid incidents and accidents from happening in other workplaces. Training is very important to our members. We have a relationship with TAFE New South Wales, and we provide our members with opportunities for nationally accredited training in the areas of chain of responsibility, fatigue management, and work safely near overhead wires. These are areas of compliance that are very, very important to our sector. And when members go to tender, they often have to demonstrate that their workers have been trained in these areas. We also offer non-accredited training in the areas of toolbox talks on site for the members to enforce some of the above issues. And we do resource recovery training. Originally, the resource recovery training was funded by the government, but we now do it on our own. New South Wales is one of 6 states and 2 territories across Australia. So in Australia, there's the 8 jurisdictions and there's a federal government. It's important to know that each jurisdiction has its own waste and recycling laws and regulations. And until recently, the federal government really didn't play in this space, but they have now banned the export of unprocessed recyclables. And that is having a significant impact upon the waste management situation across the whole of Australia. But it is important to note that we do have 6 states and 2 territories, and they all have vastly different waste and recycling laws and regulations. So I'm now going to give you a bit of a run overview on New South Wales. Next slide. Most of our collection systems, and these are just domestic curbside collection systems, are based upon every resident, every household having a bin with a red lid. Now, there's an Australian standard for mobile garbage bins that defines what type of bin and what the colours are, and red is the colour for waste management. And most Australian households will have a 140 litre bin, perhaps up to 240 litre if it's a bigger household, and that bin is serviced weekly. Most Australian households will also have a bin with a yellow lid. It's a 240 litre size and it's collected fortnightly, and that's for their dry commingled recyclables. Most households will have a bin with a green lid for green waste. And now we're hearing the term FOGO, and I'm sure you've heard the term FOGO spoken about in recent times, which is food organic green collections, and that is collected fortnightly. Most Australian households also have access to a bulky curbside collection, which is on call or annual. And if you live in Victoria, God help you if you live in Victoria, but if you live in Victoria, you'll have a new bin for glass, which I really don't understand why they would be having a new bin for glass, because at the same time, they're planning to introduce a CDS system. So it sort of doesn't make much sense to the rest of us, but that's their choice. They'll have a 4-bin system down there. But in my view, having a bin for glass is just adding more cost into the system, and that bin will become redundant because they're introducing a container deposit scheme there. Next slide. In New South Wales, we have a very, very high waste levy of $147 per tonne on waste that is sent to landfill. It's the highest waste levy in the country, and it's designed to encourage recycling and to avoid material being landfilled. The waste levy is slightly lower in regional areas of $84.70, and in remote parts of New South Wales it's $0. There is very, very complex regulations and high compliance costs for waste operators in New South Wales. Our members report to me that as much as 60 cents in the dollar, so 60% of the revenue that they collect as a waste transporter either relates to the waste levy or to the tipping component or to some environmental charge. So we are a very, very expensive place to do waste. The export ban of unprocessed recyclable materials has had a significant impact upon the market. It's added more cost into the system. The supply of material is still the same, but the demand has been reduced. And as we speak today, there is a very, very significant issue that's blowing up currently, and that is that there's a bit of a shipping crisis going on, and the cost of getting a shipping container out of New South Wales to one of the export markets for processed recyclables is in the order of $12,000, and that's only if you can get vessel space. And we have a waste from energy policy that's just knocked out the two most advanced proposals, and insurance premiums are increasing significantly. Next slide. We have a massive issue at the moment with risk sharing issues in collection and processing contracts, and that all ties back to some of these export bans. We've got a likely ban by the New South Wales government now on the use of mixed construction and demolition waste to produce recycled soils and fines. There's no agreed procedure for dealing with a small piece of asbestos in C&D recycling. And we've got a regulatory system that can be revoked without a full proper regulatory impact assessment. And the system is quite dysfunctional at the moment, and the EPA has just announced a full review of our resource recovery framework. So I'm suggesting that if you want to base your resource recovery and recycling systems, you don't really look at New South Wales now, but perhaps we can talk in about 18 months' time, because I think we may have a supercharged and better system by then. Next slide. Our position is we want a level commercial playing field. We want certainty. We want to be listened to. All recyclables and waste should be managed in a safe, sustainable and environmentally sound manner. All regulations should be enforced by all regulators. And our government, which collects in the order of $775 million a year in waste levies, is well placed to assist our waste management sector. A lot of that money, 90% of it, in the order of sort of 85 to 90%, stays in consolidated revenue, and our industry doesn't see it back. Next slide. Effective recycling and resource recovery requires two government departments, in my view, and our members will support this entirely. You need an EPA type agency who is responsible for enforcing laws and regulations pertaining to waste and recycling management. But you need a different government department, totally different department that's not answerable to the EPA, to be responsible for recycling and resource recovery. Next slide. We also require consistency, certainty and fairness for investors to want to invest in waste management solutions. And we require consistency, certainty and fairness so that the business that's making the investment decision can obtain an acceptable rate of return on its investment. And that's really important, because we've had plenty of situations in Australia where governments have changed the laws partway through a project and they've left assets stranded. They've left investors, really, in a difficult position. And there've been a number of contractual disputes because governments have changed the laws halfway through a project. Next slide. To achieve a full diversion, an effective diversion from landfill, and to pursue effective and lawful waste management solutions, we need infrastructure and we need investment from the commercial sector. I'll reiterate again, the commercial sector requires certainty, it requires adequate time and a rate of return, and because these are all part of the investment decision. And investment decisions always will require the approval of financiers, banks, and the board. And if you can get the settings right and you can get the parameters right, the private sector will invest in waste management solutions, but it's really important for governments to get the settings right.
Thanks very much, Tony. That was a very valuable presentation. And for those on the conference today, Tony has always been very generous with his time and is an absolute wealth of knowledge. So thanks once again. I'd like to introduce our third presenter for the day, and that's Lindsay Tiobasi. Lindsay's one of our next association is one of the new kids on the block, whose formation comes because of support provided by JICA through the JPRSM project and SPREP. Lindsay is the president of the Solomon Islands Recycling and Waste Management Association. Lindsay has over 40 years of experience as a teacher and is the owner and the director of the Design and Technology Centre located in Honiara. I'm personally very interested to hear this presentation, and I think it'd be very valuable to hear what's going on the ground in the Solomon Islands. So I'll hand the presentation over to Lindsay now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be able to represent the Solomon Island Recycling and Waste Management Association. First, as introduced, I am glad to be part of this presentation. To give you first some background information on the Recycling Association of Solomon Islands. The association was established in November of 2019, and it is a newly established organization. And in February of 2021, SHREMA launched its strategic plan 2021 to 2030. And we have now, as an association, registered about 20 members, with more that have shown interest to join the association. And our members consist mainly of recyclers, waste management advocates, and manufacturers. We also have some non-government organizations and government agencies within the association. As I said, it is a new organization, and we are new to this type of management of recycling. And as I said, we are gradually developing this organization in its new stage. Now, the purpose of establishing this association basically is to enhance the capacity of waste management in the Solomon Islands through active participation of the private sector. And we are focusing more on looking at improving collaboration between the government and the private sector. Also, we are looking at improving, supporting policy and legal frameworks. I think one of the important aspects that we would like to see is a lot of policies are being developed by the Solomon Island government and various legal implications that are integrated with that, and also with the Honiara City Council, Ministry of Environment. I think those are the main bodies, with the Ministry of Health and Medical Services. And so we are looking at the collaboration that we would like to have within those legal bodies. We also looking at improving the access and collaboration with development partners to help us look on waste-related developments and looking at what the private business can do, which we cannot access at the moment. But that's basically what we, as an association, would like to develop further. Now, looking at some of the current issues that we have, I think one of the biggest challenge that we face is littering, around in the Solomon Islands and in the Honiara city. Looking at illegal dumping is one big major challenge that we have. There is a very little way of controlling people, dumping all this waste in and around the city and in the country. We also have the lack of waste management services. This is one of the biggest problems that we have in Honiara, in the Solomons. Only urban and town areas would have these services, but there is very little on services what we have within the country. We also have limited government land for proper waste disposal services in all the islands. Right now, with this new program on waste management, especially looking for a newer land site with the 2023 games coming, we are really trying to look at how we can relocate the current Ranandi land site to another place that should be out from the the coming game, so that the place is much more presentable and ready for that. We have inter-island shipping costs, which are also a problematic area and difficult for promoting recycling in the outer islands. Recycling operations are mostly focused on non-ferrous metals, and other wastes are still going to the waste disposal sites, that is what we as an organization are looking at, how we can work together on that. Now, some of the future visions that we are looking at is to establish a center of learning, research, and design of products. And you would appreciate, as a new organization, this is what we are sort of looking at for the current. And we also look at trying to help assist the existing recyclers to develop the recycling and waste management programs, overarching within the areas of polymers, especially plastics, e-waste, aluminum cans, and waste oils. These are some of the things that we, as a new established organization, are currently looking as our future visions, and also looking at proper waste management through the application of the 3 R's plus return, which is very crucial if we are to solve the problem, especially plastic waste, which starts on land and of course ends up in our oceans. Now, at this juncture, we have this call for all our stakeholders, including the families in the Solomon Islands, our households, communities, and institutions, to work together with the government, also looking at development partners, partnering with the association and the various businesses around in Solomon Islands, in collaboration through the implementation of the recycling and waste management activities to mitigate impacts of climate change, both in technical and financial support. I think all in all, as a Solomon Islands, It is a new association, and our vision and our thinking now is together we can make a lasting change and a better future for our young generations in the Solomon Islands. And I would like to acknowledge and thank you indeed for supporting the Solomon Islands and the association SHREMA to work together in the region and internationally. Thank you very much. I think that's what I can say here in presentation for the Solomon Island Association. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lindsay. That was a very interesting presentation, and certainly having spent much time in the Pacific, I can understand the challenges of recycling, particularly with when you have a variety of islands of different sizes. Now listen, for today we've got a question and answers session shortly that's just coming up now. If you're unfamiliar with using Zoom, there is a chat function on the Zoom where you can enter your questions that I will read and then relay them to the respective person to answer the question. So can you please, so I don't have to do all of the hard work, could you please come up with some good questions? I'm sure there's a lot that we can learn from the from the people on the call. And really, probably to start with, maybe I may make just a few comments as the questions come through. From what I have seen over the years in the Pacific, a lot of the waste that gets recycled is waste that has value. So, we're often talking about materials like non-ferrous scrap. So if you look at batteries or copper, those types of things get recycled, but often we see materials that have very low value, like waste plastic, bottles, and even some hazardous waste like waste oil, causing quite significant problems. So I think it's very interesting for this type of association, this grouping of people. It's easy for us to solve the problems where waste has a value. Much harder to come up with solutions for waste where the waste has no value, and that there's a need to come up with an appropriate solution for where you live. A solution where I live in Australia is going to be very, very different to a solution in Papua New Guinea or the Solomon Islands. They're going to vary. Every single country is going to have different needs and different priorities. So I might ask a question, but can you please use the chat function to come through? Aurori, can you hear me okay? Is that coming through okay? Would you mind if I just asked you a quick question about your members? How do you practically talk to and communicate with your members so that you can everybody, I'm sure, has different ideas. How do you manage to get your members to contribute?
Merci pour cette question. Donc, on a une organisation de travail qui est prédéfinie. Alors, en général, les problématiques peuvent venir de plusieurs acteurs. Soit c'est un porteur de projet, soit les institutions nous contactent, soit au cours de réunions où, en discutant après à la pause café, on identifie encore des synergies possibles, des choses à travailler ensemble. Et ensuite, quand les membres se manifestent sur la volonté de s'attaquer à une thématique en particulier, je m'occupe de la coordination et je leur propose un groupe de travail. Et donc, j'informe la totalité des membres. Chaque membre ensuite me fait un retour en disant « je veux participer à ce groupe de travail ou ce groupe de travail ». Et ensuite, on met en place un plan d'action avec un calendrier et on avance étape par étape.
Thank you very much for that. That was very, very, very informative. And there's I can see that there is some questions coming through, which is tremendous. There's one there that has sparked my interest with regard to funding. That's from Bradley Nolan. It's a question to Tony, and the question is, we've heard about countries looking to introduce sustainable financing legislation to assist with waste management. You spoke about the waste levy in your presentation, Tony. Can you talk to us quickly about the industry perspective on financing? How does the industry pay for things? And what advice would you give to countries as they go through the design and consultation? So the question is really, how do you go about the funding? How can we go about funding this type of arrangement? If you've got any suggestions, Tony.
Thanks, Carl, and thanks, Bradley, for the question. Our waste levy in New South Wales, as I portrayed in my presentation, is $775 odd million a year that the government collects. It's a tax on the industry. The bulk of that money is not seen back as an investment back into the industry. The bulk of that money is used by government to fund things like transport, schools, and hospitals. The money that does come back, private enterprise doesn't get a lot of. It tends to go to local government to help support the municipal collections that take place, the 3-bin system that I described. And there's a fair bit of a much better access that local government has to that waste levy. I would encourage any government that's looking to introduce a waste levy to make sure that the waste levy funds are quarantined and hypothecated back fully for waste management and recycling purposes. That is an absolute essential in my view, because politicians, once they get hold of the money, and this is the problem we have in New South Wales, both sides of politics are addicted to the money and we can't get it back into our industry. So if you're looking to set up a waste levy system, if your country can afford to have a waste levy system, then the waste levy funds should be quarantined and hypothecated back for use in waste management and recycling purposes. Does that adequately answer the question, Carl?
No, I think that's very good. And the whole concept of financing is very, very important. And I think if Simon doesn't mind answering this question, it's one that I think is very, very important. It's really to just ensure that everyone's familiar with the Moana project to help reduce the costs of shipping recycling to recycling facilities larger than their host countries. So, Simon, if it's possible, would you mind just providing some, a bit of detail around that query?
Yeah, I am going to cover that just immediately after the break. But basically, we will provide a container for free and the freight for free to move waste that anyone in the Pacific Island communities has collected, providing the collector has somewhere to send it to. So, because that's not our business. We're a shipping company. So anyone who has waste of whatever type, hazardous, non-hazardous, etc., if you have a consignee or someone at the other end who can deal with it in a responsible, certified, sustainable way, then we will help you get it from wherever you are to wherever it needs to be.
Thanks, Simon, and I certainly don't mean to steal your thunder for your presentation coming up shortly, but I think to Tony's point a little earlier in the presentation, shipping costs are expensive at best, and particularly since we've had the global disruption with COVID, it's made the process even more challenging. So that type of initiative and generosity of the participants is absolutely outstanding and can certainly help deal with a lot of the higher risk materials. And I think as an observation over the years, it's really some of those materials. An example might be waste oil, where really does present a significant risk to the environment if it's left in the field. If you have a drum that's degrading out in the field and it leaks into a waterway, you can have a significant problem. So being able to prioritise some of those higher risk wastes, is certainly very, very important in my mind. And obviously, to Simon's point as well, I think having the destination for the waste in mind is very important. There is of course, for certain materials, there is the Waikani Convention, which dictates where materials can move within the Pacific. If you're moving out of the Pacific, you can have implications. For example, the China sword policy that stopped recyclables going through to China. In many respects, it's made it even more difficult for the Pacific Island nations to be able to come up with suitable recycling programs. And I suspect that some of the initiatives that you'll hear and perhaps hear in the second half of the presentations is going to be about building up domestic capabilities, so capabilities within the various countries who are participating on this call, to be able to deal with materials like plastics, or in the case of hazardous waste, for example, oil, or at least take some of those hazardous materials out of circulation. But we've reached 5 to the hour. We're going to take a 5-minute break now, and then we're going to be moving into the second stream of presentations. But for all of those presenters, on behalf of the audience, I would like to thank you. They were all extremely interesting presentations and very, very topical and informative. And I hope you can join us for the second half of the presentations. Thanks very much, and welcome back, everyone. Just briefly, for those of you who may have just joined us, my name's Carl Bolt-Perkins. We've got the second half of the technical session today. And I'll be introducing a series of speakers to provide a 10-minute presentation. And at the end of those 3 presentations, we'll again have another question and answers session. So you have the opportunity to ask some questions and start some dialogue, which I think is incredibly important. This particular session is going to focus more on waste management business initiatives by private businesses, which is, in my mind, often the key to success is to get business involved, because, that typically often results in self-sustaining businesses and obviously training and skill sharing, which I think is, I'm extremely interested to hear more about today. To start off with, I would like to introduce the next presenter, who probably needs no introduction, as he is a well-known friend of the Pacific. I speak of none other than Simon Bennett. He'll speak to us today about the Moana partnership as a solution to problem by the private sector. Simon started his career at sea in 1974 at the age of 17 as a navigating officer cadet with the Union Castle Line Clan. After a 3-year sabbatical to take an honours degree at the UAE at Norwich, UK, where he read environmental science, majoring in meteorology, oceanography, and minoring in marine and coastal management and environmental hazards. He resumed his seagoing career. 38 plus years ago, he joined Swire Pacific Offshore, which provides offshore marine support services. After several trips as a master in 2008, he became assured to take the role of GM of Sustainable Development in the Singapore head office, and then added in 2012 Swire Shipping, the Swire Group's privately owned deep sea company with 40 liner breakbulk ships trading amongst the region. And then Swire Bulk Shipping Company at the beginning of 2021 to expand his list of employers. He was a director of the Singapore Environment Council up until the end of June 20, and is currently a director of both the World Ocean Council and the British Chamber of Commerce in Singapore, where he represents shipping sustainability on the committees for their A, infrastructure and responsibility, B, transport and logistics, and C, diversity and inclusion in business groups. And I think it's going to be, I'm fascinated to hear Simon's presentation, and I think we'll all say that shipping and logistics plays such an important role in the overall success of waste management and recycling. And I think that what Simon's going to share today will be tremendous. I'll hand the floor over to you now. Thanks, Simon.
Okay, thanks, Carl, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody, wherever you are. Okay, so we're going to talk about I'm going to talk in my 9.5 minutes left on the Moana WAKAR partnership around the Pacific. As a group, the Swire Shipping, which was China Navigation until two months ago, will be 150 years old next year, and the group itself is over nearly 210 years old. We've believed in doing the right thing environmentally, sustainably, and in all the other sort of values and ethics areas for a very long time. I probably got the easiest job in the world. When I want to do something which I feel is the right thing to do environmentally, if I ask the board, I get very strange looks, and I'm told, why are you even asking us? It's the right thing to do. Go ahead and do it. So all of you are all quite safe. I'm not chasing your jobs at all. I'm very happy where I am. You know this. You're responsible in the Pacific for 10% of the world's oceans, and there is a huge amount of solid waste, a lot of plastics, which is ending up there, which is affecting the fisheries, which is affecting tourism, and it shouldn't be there. So this whole initiative kicked off at the United Nations Environment Assembly number 4 in December 2017 in Nairobi, where very fortuitously I met Tony Tululi and the team from SPREP. And it was very obvious that there is a large problem with all the waste which is coming into the Pacific, coming in fishing vessels, so discarded nets, some cruise ships. This is all pre-COVID, of course, and the container ships which we run. So as a result of that, we set up the Moana WAKAR partnership, which I'm leading into now. The picture on the left there is the Lautoka waste management, or the Lautoka municipal dump in Fiji. And nearly everything you see there, well, 90% is brought in by ships, 10% is brought in by aircraft. But what we are bringing in on our ships is the likes of printer cartridges, shrink wrapped in plastic, Barbie dolls and toys, shrink wrapped in plastic, cases of soya sauce, shrink wrapped in plastic. And that's all required by consumers in the Pacific, but the packaging that comes with it and the old items when they've been finished with, there is nowhere to send them because it's currently not viable to set up waste management plants in every one of the islands in the Pacific. So there I am at the bottom there with Sefa and Tony. We got together and we set up the Moana WAKAR partnership because we recognize that as a shipping company, we are part of the problem. We're bringing all this stuff in, we're emptying our containers, and then we take the container back out to the Pacific Rim and load it with more Barbie dolls and printer cartridges and soy sauce and bring it back in again. So we need to be part of the solution. And the fact is, the realization was that we're taking our containers back out empty to load more objects covered in what will become waste packaging. So we can actually take waste out to where there are recycling plants before we bring more consumer goods back in. It addresses these 3 SDGs here in having a more sustainable consumption regime, to remove the toxic waste which is ending up in the water as the typhoons blow the waste at the top of the municipal dumps into the surrounding water. the picture of the Lautoka municipal waste site there, that's right next to the coast. So it doesn't take much wind to blow the light stuff off the top and into the water. And we've got internal targets to divert from landfill, but we can help our key stakeholder communities in the Pacific to also reduce degradable waste to landfills. This is the latest issue I could find of our route network. I'm hoping this presentation will be available to all of you afterwards. There's a URL down at the bottom where you can check the latest route network and schedules. If you live in any one of these dots here in the Pacific Islands, we can transport waste from wherever your dot is to whether it be Korea, Japan. China's difficult at the moment, but Vietnam, Malaysia, Australia, New Zealand, we can take it to where there are already established, sustainable, certified, responsible recycling plants. This is the sort of stuff we are moving. So we agreed in December 2017 to do this. We had the MOU in place by World Recycling Day in 2018 in March. So we kicked off fairly slowly, but then the quantities were increasing until in February, March 2020, the COVID epidemic arrived, and that slowed us down. But we have a lot of capacity. We can move, excuse me, a minute. We can move far more than we are already moving. We have the containers around the place. We are still bringing all these consumer goods into the center of the Pacific. We can take it back out again. We just need you to talk to us. There's an internal email address at the end. Either talk to us or talk to Tony at SPREP. Tell us what you've got. Tell us where you want to send it to, because we, as a shipping company, have no knowledge or expertise in that area. But providing you have a shipper at one end and a consignee at the other end, we will move it for you for free. This is what we've done so far. So there is nowhere on our route network that we cannot ship from, and there is nowhere on our route network that we cannot ship to. We are now working on PCBs and DDT, e-waste, ozone depleting substances, and waste oil. On the right there, you can see a 4 kiloliter chemical tank. We've got access to up to 18 of these from another group company. They're currently in Australia, and we are going to be providing these over the next 6 months, I hope, to move waste oil or other waste liquid substances. It doesn't have to be oil. So if you know where you can ship it to, we will provide the container for free, and we will ship it for free to the place where it can be responsibly recycled. So that's my short-term goal. It won't happen this year because this year's almost over, but certainly in the first half of next year is to have these tanks moving around in the Pacific. That's a summary of what we've done so far. And looking further ahead, the next project will be to look at the recovery, as it says here, recovery, movement, and recycling of end-of-life vehicles, large industrial goods, so washing machines, that sort of thing, which are currently just being dumped. We can move tires as well. We are looking to purchase 1 or possibly 2 crushing machines so that we can squish the cars down into cubes, fit them all in containers, and then hopefully we will help you to return your beautiful lands to being beautiful lands, beautiful islands for the day. God, I hope it's soon when the tourists come back again and we can travel once more. So here are some addresses. Varashna is our lead on this. She's our recycling guru. She's in Suva. So if you have waste and you know where you can send it to, speak to Varashna. The Waigani Convention was mentioned earlier, which is linked to the Basel Convention. If it's hazardous waste, we can ship that, providing we have an exemption certificate from the country where you are shipping it from to the country where you are shipping it to. So it's not true that hazardous waste cannot be shipped. It can be shipped with suitable exemptions, and Tony and the SPREP team will help us to arrange those where they are possible. Last point I would make is if you can stand watching another 3 minutes of me, there's a video link at the bottom of this slide here. If you click on that, there's a 3-minute video which shows you the process in a little bit more detail. We have an FAQ sheet, which we're happy to send you. So, and as I said earlier on, we have a lot of spare capacity at the moment. So we need your help to fill it, and we need your help to remove, or to help divert land to waste to landfill, which is what's happening at the moment. The whole thing, the summary of the whole thing comes back to United Nations Environment Assembly. That was a collection of the right people at the right time. We had science and academics there, and they're the people who tell us what the problem is. We had governments and IGOs there, and they are the people who can facilitate the solution. But my call to all of you is involve the private sector, because we are the people who can help fix this. That's our day job. That's what we do morning, noon, and night. We need the right environment. We need to know what we're supposed to be doing, and then we can get on with it. So I pass that back to you. Happy to answer questions, I think, at the end of all these presentations.
Yeah, that's right, Simon. So we'll take questions at the end in the questions and answers session. But, I can say personally, I've been involved in a lot of movement of particularly hazardous waste around the world and into Australia, and certainly have enjoyed working with Swires, bringing material into Australia. They're an absolutely first-class organisation that's been around for a very, very long time, and they take the guesswork out of it. But I think this initiative is just outstanding, and really it's up to the individual participants on this phone to make the most of it. But it is an absolutely tremendous opportunity for people to be able to leverage and dispose of hazardous waste or recyclable materials. So without further ado, we'll move on to our second presentation for this session. As a personal friend of mine, Mr. Corey Chan. Corey Chan is the managing director of one of the Pacific's, if not its largest, integrated waste management business called Total Waste Management, which has recently emerged as Papua New Guinea's and one of the Pacific's leading waste management companies. They've grown on the back of PNG's rapid industrial growth and the waste challenges they create. Here today, he's going to be telling how the company saw an opportunity in creating a solution for PNG's huge volumes of waste oil. A company that Corey started in 2011. Corey has facilitated enormous number of transboundary movements of waste between PNG, Solomon Islands and Australia over the last decade, and is well versed in the IMDG standards and the Waigani and Basel conventions that were mentioned a little early. Corey is currently leading TWM Group to develop the Pacific's first world-class integrated waste management facility. Corey is a director on the board of PNG Future Endowment Fund, which is an organisation that advocates for customary land ownership in PNG. And Corey is also the president of the Capital Rugby Union Association, the premier and oldest rugby union competition in PNG. And most recently, he was elected as the interim president for the PNG Waste Management and Recycling Association, formed in 21. During his free time, he is a husband, a father of his 4-year-old daughter, and he enjoys trekking, fishing, and sports. For PNG Independence Day this year, he completed a trek to PNG's highest point, Mount Wilhelm, at 4,509 metres. He is passionate about PNG and the wider Pacific community and is committed to achieving TWM's corporate charter and protecting our natural and cultural heritage. So on top of that, he's an all-round good bloke and, you know, in general, has managed to, I think, leverage a business founded on managing industrial wastes and leveraging those skills to help the community in lots and lots of different ways, which is a real tribute to him. Anyway, I'll hand the presentation over to you, Corey. Thanks, mate.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for your time and for the opportunity to present at the 2021 Cleaner Pacific Roundtable Conference. My name's Corey Chan. I'm the Managing Director for TWM Group. My email address is listed below, as well as our website address. And today I'll be presenting a PNG perspective on waste oil and intractable waste management in PNG. Quick disclaimer to take note of. Our purpose, vision and values are the core fundamentals of our business. What I'd like to highlight here is our vision, which is to showcase PNG as a leader in developing world-class essential services that create a positive impact on the environment and society. And I hope that this comes through throughout my presentation, just to demonstrate where we've come from and where we're heading to in the future. A quick safety and environment moment on sustainability, which is something or a core value that we've recently adopted, but also something that we're very passionate about at TWM. But what does it require to truly implement effectively and efficiently? It requires good leadership. It requires responsible decision making. It requires all of us, whether you're public or private sector, to implement and to adopt the ESG principle and framework, as well as sustainable development goals in everything that we do. It's about being passionate, remaining disciplined, and being committed to the cause. TWM was formed 10 years ago, and during that time we've evolved as a waste and water services company to an integrated services provider, providing turnkey solutions. Very quickly, in terms of our safety performance, which is what I'd like to speak about. Since inception, we have operated at a TRIFR of 0 and have recorded nil LTIs or lost time injuries. From an R&D perspective, we've been very much focused on developing in-country treatment and disposal options, looking at recycling options through innovative technologies, and also looking at renewable energies. Just to highlight or further highlight the integrated services approach, we've now morphed into that type of service provider, providing turnkey solutions. The core of the business has always remained around the waste and water services, but now we're offering industrial services, we're offering environmental advisory services, and we're also providing training and development of manpower, as well as renewable energies and shipping logistics services from a coastal domestic perspective. This is just a cross-section of the type of industry that we deal with. Most notably would be the oil and gas, mining, and food manufacturers. However, there are a number of different types of industry that we also manage waste for in PNG. So going back 10 years ago, we were very limited in PNG, particularly when you look across the entire landscape for suitable treatment and disposal options for particularly hazardous waste, including waste oil. As a result, we went down a path of obtaining permits to import hazardous waste into Australia under the Waigangi Basel Convention. Over the period of 10 years, we've developed very strong rapport and relationships with key competent authorities, including the Department of Environment in Australia, SEPA in Papua New Guinea, and also the Solomon Islands through the transiting of waste through the SI waters and boundaries. We've held a number of different permits, but our current permits include non-halogenated solvents, acids and alkali bases, waste oil, e-waste. This statistic is just to highlight from 2017 to 2021, the volume of waste oil and oily water that's been received, and of that volume, what has been exported. As you can see, a large portion of that has been exported, up to 500,000 litres. But what we do estimate, and this is quite scary, is that there is a circa of 12 million litres of legacy waste oil stockpiled throughout the country. This poses a huge risk and threat to the country and to the region. Some of the reasons why there's been limitations in the amount of volume that we can export is it comes down basically to the cost. So if you look at the bottom, the last line there, around the cost per litre to export, a total cost of 3 Kina 36, or equivalent of $1.50 Australian, to export and treat and dispose of waste oil at an overseas facility for PNG. And for far too many Pacific Islands nations, that is just not sustainable, nor is it viable. These pictures are just a demonstration of the level of degree that our company go to in terms of packaging and handling of hazardous waste, in particular waste oil. Abiding by various guidelines or international guidelines, such as MARPOL, such as IMDG standards, and of course the transboundary movement under the Waigani-Basel Convention. Some further photos just demonstrating the level of dunnage that we implement to ensure stability and securing of receptacles through that export process. I guess that's now led us down a path of introducing some technologies. And this particular technology we introduced about 4 years ago, which is a waste oil processing unit, which is a containerized centrifugal unit to strip out sludges and oily waters from waste oil product. The unit can process up to 7,000 litres per day with a yield of 84%. There is a byproduct that consists of sludge and oily water. And what we have undertaken through our R&D initiative is to produce a fuel whereby we use a blended product of diesel and PFO to operate our high temperature incinerator. The benefit of that, aside from finding a beneficial reuse for a waste product, is that we've also reduced our fuel costs by 50%. In addition, we've also identified or introduced new technology through our industrial wastewater treatment plant to treat the byproducts such as oily water. Challenges and opportunities. Just to touch on some, limited offtake, market options for processed fuel and PNG, illegal waste oil operations, the collection, the exporting of these products overseas, breaking international conventions, and the lack of enforcement and regulation in country. The lack of policy framework, regulation, stewardship program to incentivise waste oil management, recycling, and appropriate disposal options. And this final point is probably more of an opportunity, but it's about the regional cooperation and lack of dialogue, feeding into a Pacific hub, a la the TWM Roku facility, for consolidation, treatment, beneficial reuse, and residual disposal. At TWM, I believe we're on a path of delivering change. We're an advocate and supporter of new policy and compliance improvement. Most recently, we've been a member of the steering committee to help develop the National Waste and Chemical Management Policy. I've also recently joined the PNG Waste Management Recycling Association, where I hold the position of interim president. We've invested significantly in water and waste infrastructure. We recognise that we are now in a sustainability age, and that is about realisation, it's about adaptation, it's about delivery. And most notably, we are delivering on our company vision and purpose. My last slide is about a future solution for the Pacific. I'd like to introduce to everyone the TWM Roku Integrated Waste Management Facility, a development and extension of existing infrastructure and operations of the IWMF, expansion of waste types and complexities able to be processed, reused and recovered and treated. It has an ability to handle up to 150,000 of commercial and industrial waste over a facility life of 50 years. It is ideally situated to support the Pacific nations. Easy deployment of personnel and equipment, close proximity to major wharfing infrastructure, and specialist waste and industrial services infrastructure to support solutions-driven activities for our clients and our neighbours. Thank you, Agatha. Any questions and answers, please feel free to table them.
Thank you very much, Corey. That was a very informative presentation today. And I think we'll certainly answer some questions and answers, but the big takeaway I've had from the business is the idea that of what we call this hub and spoke model, where if, for example, you don't need to duplicate the infrastructure, you know, in every country and every island, the idea is that you are able to consolidate waste and ship it up to central facilities. And obviously, Corey and the TWM team are developing the facilities. The facilities in PNG, and that's going to be able to cater for a significant volume of waste that not only comes out of Papua New Guinea, but I think in general, you know, through the region. Now, without any further ado, we'll move on to our next speaker, our next presenter, which is Nancy Vito. And I'll just provide an introduction here. Samoa Stationery and Books takes its corporate and social responsibilities very seriously. As Samoan's leading business in its sector and the country's only authorised retailer for Hewlett-Packard products, it has partnered with HP to ensure that all of their products that reach the end of life are safely disposed of at specialised facilities overseas. Here is more about the important collaboration between businesses in SSAB's Chief Operating Officer for Electronics, Nancy Vito. A Samoan herself, Nancy is also the founder and president for the Samoan Takalau Association of Recyclers, a much-loved mother to 3 beautiful children, a woman of prayer, and an advocate for the environment in Samoa. So I'm really looking forward to hearing this presentation, and I'll hand it over to Nancy. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Hermes, for that lovely introduction. I am so honored and very excited to be part of the roundtable discussion. When I got the invitation, I was over the moon. Thank you for that. Let's start. Been enjoying everyone's presentation. So we'll just start with mine. So as introduced, we're Samoa Stationery and Books. Electronics we're part of the biggest importers in terms of electronics. Just a bit on Samoa Stationery and Books, established in 2008, providing a wide range of reading books and basic stationery. We've got a branch in 2010, started the electronics store. 2011, we opened a big island of Savai'i. As you know, Samoa consists of 2 islands, Upolu and Savai'i. In 2012, we opened a mega store here at SSAB. In 2016, opened a branch in New Zealand. Next slide, please. Thank you. Since joining the market 13 years ago, Samoa Stationery and Books, through business innovation, has become the leading supplier of electronic products, as well as toners and inks. some of them HB and some more, as it became clear that all the EE toners and coverages were imported and no one was taking up this ownership of disposing them responsibly. SAB, being the authorized dealer here of HB, had made it easy for the Take Back initiative. It took 5 years to fight HB for this until they finally agreed that they will, help us to take back this used cartridges, toners and inks. So with this Take Back initiative, SAP is collecting all the HB discarded toners and inks. As mentioned, we are the biggest importers. It's not just HB, but also for other electronic goods, but we're starting off with the HB. Sorry, a little bit nervous. So with that, we started doing that in 2019. As we all know, freight costs and recycling costs were all covered by HB. So I think the very next person that I'll be talking to after is Simon Bennett. I'd like to be your friend, Simon. So they've been paying for this cost. We've taken back 3 shipments already. By doing this, I believe that we are achieving EPR through this Take Back initiative. So SAP, through its partnership with the, so now at the moment, we are talking to somebody in Australia through the AVI program. It's an Australian volunteer program that we're talking to, and now they're willing to take back not just HB cartridges, but all other brands. And that includes Fuji Xerox, Canon, Kyocera, Oki brand, you name it. But my only obstacle was that there's no shipping that, I would have to cover the cost. So I'm very excited when I heard about the SWAR shipping. So we'll probably look into that opportunity later. Next one, please. What have we done? So as I said, 2018, we signed up this, the multi-million-dollar company has signed up to take back. In 2018, we launched a partnership with, of course, MNRE, the government, and HP for this initiative. And that's when we started taking back the used cartridges of inks and toners. So in 2019, we did a seminar sponsored by ILO, International Labor Organization. And in 2019, we took back later on that year, in August, we took back our first shipments. So as of today, to date, we have done 3 shipments already of cartridges paid by HP, all freight and everything paid for, even the recycling costs. Next one, please. Way forward, we would like the legislation to address the e-waste as an ongoing issue, probably more seminars, and there will be a need to be a national action for e-waste as a whole. Technical and donor agencies must have holistic funding streams specific for e-waste, including these inks and toners. Next one, I hope. As you can see, we got friend Bradley Nolan in the picture and a few of our MNRE partners. They came to one of the seminars. That was the previous one, but these are some of the pictures. This is what we're doing. We've done in the past. As I said, we're very proud of what we've done. But taking it back, like Hermes mentioned it, and I like how Simon said it. We are the problem and we're going to be part of that solution. And that's why SAP took this initiative, because we want to be a part of the solution. We believe we are the waste generators here in terms of e-waste. And I must mention that we're not just an agent for HP, we're also an agent for Samsung. So we import a lot of TVs, a lot of washing machines, whiteware, you name it. We get loads and loads of containers every month. So that is our next step. We've done the first part where we really look to talk to these big suppliers and helping us achieving that and taking this out of Samoa. As you can see, that's some of the jobs we've done with sorting. So every time we do the sorting, we have to sometimes if we don't have anyone to help us, SAP covers for the cost of labor and every other cost, delivery and wharfage costs that comes with it. So yes, next one, please. That was the last activity internship we did in June this year, sponsored by LO. These are some of the people that have been laid off work from the COVID. Some of them were working in the from the Samoa Workers Congress. We've got the lady there, Saina. So these are some of the people that were unemployed, that were laid off work, and we hired them through the help of ILO to help with our sorting. Next one. Yeah, and some of the workshops that we've done. I must also acknowledge the help of Fort Samoa. They have, as you can see, the vehicle in the slide. That's the vehicle they gave us to help with the collection. Obviously, we need a bigger car, but we're hoping for a Good Samaritan to donate a bigger car for us to fit everything inside. But that's it from us. I mainly based my presentation today on inks and toners, but there's so much more. Like I said, we're talking to somebody over there in Australia now. They're willing to take, so I'm very excited. That's going to be the next step, is to take, I already got a full container of mixed toners that we weren't able to take back because with the Take Back initiative, it was only HB cartridges. So the next step is for us to ship this. I'll probably share that with the next, you know, if I were able to come back. I already got a full container of mixed cartridges, toners and inks that has to go out of Samoa. I do not want this to end up in our landfill. So that is my next project. My next exercise is to work on taking that. Also, I'm also talking to somebody in Australia who's willing to take back our bulky waste. As I said, we're the biggest importers. And we want to help Samoa. We do not want this to end in our landfill. So we already got lots of Whiteway, you name it, Samsung, and all the other brands in our SAP's backyard. So because of the time limit, I must stop there, or otherwise I keep going on and on. But thank you so much, guys, for the opportunity. Sorry, I forgot the last part, limitations. As you know, I mentioned in the past that manpower, we definitely, the government has, and if there's a lack of manpower handling in Samoa, the growing issues from the changing world, and also the technical capacity, there is little or very no experts in Samoa, so we're struggling with that area. We don't have an e-waste dismantle, a proper facility for dismantling, and specialization and all that stuff that it needs to that, you know, that's the kind of help that we need from our end. Sorry, the moderator is Carl. I'm sorry, Carl. Depending on that, so please feel free to email me any questions, but we just put there some of the people that helped us through our journey, and I must thank them for the support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. That was firstly, you said you were nervous, but you did an absolutely fantastic presentation. And I personally found it very, very interesting and very informative. And I think, you know, when one of the big opportunities, and I think this is very, very important, and this project that Nancy has been working on is a very, very good example, and it's around what we call product stewardship or a circular economy. It's really where an organisation, if they're selling a product, they really should take some responsibility for taking the product back at the end of its life. And one of the big moves I've seen over the last 10 years is that there is a great need to build these product stewardship schemes to create a pool of money for people like Nancy to be able to do their good work and recover those products and bring them back into the market. There is product stewardship schemes in different countries. Some of e-waste is a very, very common one, Nancy. Also, waste oil is commonly subject to product stewardship, even things like batteries and paints. So, you know, I personally think in the Pacific, getting hazardous materials out of uncontrolled landfills is a really, you know, a really, really important issue. So there's a few questions coming through, but I really do encourage you all, please, to write the questions. And because I've got a lot of them here, anything that pops up in front of my face is probably the one that I'm going to ask. So please feel free to get them in now. But Nancy, I might ask a quick question of you. What other waste streams other than e-waste have you looked at within your business, or has it really just been the e-waste and the toner cartridges and so on? Is there some more opportunities there for you?
What is it? That's a good question. Thank you. Sorry, who's that? Sorry, I'm just like really in car. Yes, definitely, because I said so it's not just e-waste. So SAP consists of many. We're one of the biggest stationery shop, and also we deal with a lot of paper. Paper waste is definitely something that we're also looking at. But e-waste is mainly our focus, but we definitely, and that is the focus of STAR. I don't want to get there because that's a totally different focus of STAR. As SAP being one of the leading businesses in Samoa, the focus why we established STAR was to pull in businesses at the same thing, like the same focus for them to be responsible because they are the waste generators. So we've got a few people on board. I know you probably heard of the Aliki people from Taula. They're very interested. So we're really trying to paint that picture like, guys, you know, we really are part of the problem. So we really should do something about it because STAR is still a baby, just been born a few months. But I know that I just have this really strong feeling that if I really pull in this business with the business community is really our focus, because I didn't just do e-waste because I wanted to, because I'm involved in electronics. I've seen the numbers growing day by day, and we just switched to digital TV 2 years ago. So, and I've just seen it go, and I thought, well, I can't just turn a blind eye. I must do something about this. So hence, I started looking into, you know, into this, and really that's why STAR is born. The STAR was born. And it's, you know, it's really for that purpose, but something we can discuss later. So I have a few business on board. I've yet to schedule a massive meeting with them, but that's the idea, is to really pull all the businesses in Samoa to work together. And we got the Moana Taka, we got Simon, and oh, what a, you know, great hearts. We need more hearts like that. And then we got the opportunity, but we'll talk more into about the next shipment, but that's our goal. I hope that answers the question.
That's superb, Nancy. And I think, again, I just have great respect for these types of programs and people such as yourselves who put the initiative into it. There's a couple of themes of questions that we've got a little bit of time left, and there's a couple of themes of questions that I'll try and consolidate into a bit of an idea. I have one, I think, and it's also very relevant, that I'd like to ask Corey. Particularly, Corey, just maybe explain to the team, like, you've done an exceptional job in leveraging your experience in working with industry to develop schemes that are helping the overall community. Would you be able to share, for example, some of your learnings in that area? Like how, for example, if someone on the call is doing work for maybe a resort, for example, how could they leverage the exposure to an industry to be able to fund some community activities that can help clean up some of these problematic wastes?
That's for me.
Yeah.
That's for me.
Yeah, Corey. Yeah, if you can.
Yeah. So, sorry, I'm just trying to understand the question. Just in terms of, sorry, is it an example of a private sector?
Just as maybe a practical example where you've done a lot of work for the oil and gas industry. How have you been able to leverage that to be able to help the community?
Okay. Back to the IWMF facility. But I guess working with the likes of some of the clients that we deal with, like Exxon's, for instance, I guess when we go back 10 years ago, there wasn't really any particular standards in terms of how to deliver waste management practices. So I guess the benefit of working with some of those overseas tier one operators is that they've allowed us to set some benchmarks. And then I think I guess how it transcends down to the local communities is around, it's opened the door in terms of education and awareness programs. Just putting in place some basic systems around bin collection, trying to segregate waste as best as possible. But I guess, in terms of the facility that we're developing here, one of the pet projects that we are doing from a community perspective is looking at ways in which we can set up a regular, bin collection service for the local village, which is less than a kilometre away from our facility. And I think that'll then provide, some really, huge benefits for the village, because at the moment, a lot of the Motuan villages on the coast, they don't have that disposal option. So a lot of the waste goes into the ocean. So I guess that's going to be one of the, the benefits of dealing with your tier ones, and then how that will then transcend down to the community. Does that sort of answer your question?
No, it's a perfect example. I think you guys have done a very good job of it. We're very close to time now. I might just ask Simon a quick question just about the MTP. Just how long is the program likely to run for? How quickly do the members need to get on board to take advantage of it?
We'd like them to come on board as quickly as possible, because we have a whole bunch of empty of capacity at the moment to move the stuff around. There is no end date for this at the moment, and I can't see there needing to be one, because we are 150 years old. We intend to be 300 years old. We're bringing in full containers and taking out empty containers. So until we get to adaptive printing, and you print whatever you need in your front room overnight, there will not be a declining need for us to bring this stuff in, and we'll keep on doing it.
And it's a tremendous benefit for the countries, and I think that's an example of the back end of product stewardship. It's really, I think taking the opportunity for those supply chains where you're bringing goods in to take them out is tremendous. Well, listen, I think we're very close to time. Very close to time now. So really, I'd just like to wrap up. I'd like to firstly thanks Brett for inviting me to moderate this session. I think it's been a great starting point for some conversations. I'd really like to thank all of the presenters for their time and doing an outstanding job, particularly with the technical challenges of presenting over the internet. And I really encourage you all to continue this conversation. There's a lot of contacts made here, and I really, absolutely encourage you to continue the conversation. So just on that, I would like to thank everybody for their time. And I hope to participate in future conferences. So thank you all.